Hello, my name is Lucas, and I'm going to help you guys do number 8 today. It says, given that the x squared plus y squared equals 20x minus 26y minus 169, what is the biggest value that 6x minus 8y can have? So, this problem took some time, but when I looked at it at first, I was like, okay, I could probably make this into like a circle form. So I subtracted over the 20x and added the 26y over here. And then I had, x squared and then an x and a y squared and a y. So I did completing the square to get this and this. And then I had to add the 100 to this side. And I had to add the 169 to this side. So it ended up being 269 minus 169. So that's how you got the 100. And then you know that there's a circle at center, x equals 10 and y equals negative 13, which I drew out here with a radius 10. And so you have this 6x minus 8y, and if we want to make that equal to y, we can say y equals 3/4 x. And that y equals 3/4 x doesn't intersect this at all. And that's if we set it equal to 0. So what we could try to do is set it equal to 1 and then solve. And if we do that, then we get y equals 3/4 x minus 1/8. And that doesn't touch either. So then, I was talking, and, we just kept on trying to do more lines. And, if you keep drawing these lines out, eventually you'll get to this one, which is the one we needed, because if you think about this, the way to solve the problem here is you want the biggest x value and the most negative y value, because that'll make the biggest number. So this is the most negative y value, negative 23, because of the radius, and then the biggest x value being 20. So I knew it had to be somewhere in the middle here. And because this line is tangent right here, and the way the radius comes down here, this slope of this line, that means this line right here is perpendicular to this line. So we have the slope of this line being 3/4 x, right? Which means that the slope of this line, because, perpendicular slopes, they're the opposite reciprocal, so we know that it has to be negative 4/3 x. And then you could just plug in the center, and then if you solve out, you'll get an equation. The fractions are kind of ugly for this, but you get an equation. Once you have the equation, then you take this and you plug it back into this, which is where it gets kind of messy, but it does end up coming out nice. So, if you go throughout all this, you're going to have to square your equation, and you're going to have to multiply it by whatever y value you have. But I do have all the work here. I'm not going to waste anybody's time by going and, it's all just basic algebra. You get all your fractions, and then what I ended up doing was multiplying by 9 so I can get all the denominators to simplify out. So then I had 9x squared, and then, this is a lot nicer to look at. And then combine all the terms, so the 9x squared and this squared, and then the x, all the x's, and then the 178 and 1,521. And it actually comes up really nice. And then I divided it by 25 to get x squared minus 20x plus 64. That factors well into these two. And I know that it had to be x equals 16 because, we wanted it to be in between this 10 and this 20. And it makes sense that it ends up being 16 because that's somewhere in the middle here. So we use the x equals 16, right? And then I plug that back into this equation to figure out the y value. 16 minus 10, you get 6 squared, 36, and then we have the y plus 13 squared. So you subtract by 36, you get 64, and we need the plus or minus because in this scenario, we're going to need the negative value. So because we want this to be the smallest negative value, because if you were to use the positive value here for the square root, then you would get -5, and that value is not small enough because that we're looking for the point that's there. And so -21 is the value that we need. And if you have the -21, then because you subtract the 13 after you take the square root, and you get y equals -21. Then you have 16 times 6, because 6. I mean 16. That's my fault. You have 16. Oh wait. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place, but you know, it is the x value is 6 times 16 anyway, is 96, and then you have the 8 times the 21 that we got, but it's negative, so that it can make it positive. So you have 168 plus 96 equals 264.